All right, everybody, welcome back to You Know Nothing. Today is our seventh episode, and this is the show where we cover about the latest news, units, new releases, everything under the sun for Song of Ice and Fire, the miniature game. Today we're covering Umber Ravagers for the Stark faction, and Kai is back with us again.
Yep, thank you for having me. Always happy to talk about Starks, and most importantly, always happy to talk about Cavalry, my favorite unit type in the game.
Okay, well, why don't you talk to us, and tell us where you think Starks currently fare in the past 1 month?
Well, I think they have an even wider variety than before, since last we talked, and I think nowadays the meta is very diverse. Lists are not always the best simply because there's always a counter to them. So Stark having so many options, they can deal with a lot of different opponents depending on how you build them. So I'm pretty happy as a Stark player.
That's fair. That's fair. Starks do have some of the most amount of products in the game, including access to some things that are not in the faction, like Jack and Hagar. Yeah. So let's move on by looking at our units for today. Our star unit today is the Umber Ravager. But sorry, before we move on, let's break down and talk about the new format/structure. In order to get more of my guests to talk more and for me to talk less, we decided to change things up again. Just like last week, we are following last week's format where it's all about building the list together. So what happens is that we'll always start by introducing the unit. Then we'll move on to talking about the commander that we chose, and then we'll move on to the NCUs, and then like assembling a main dish together, we'll show you our list that we have assembled in the last section. So let's move on and start by looking at what the Umber Ravagers can do. Yeah. So, yep, it's a cavalry unit. So, as most cavalries, if not all cavalry units, have a free maneuver. So, they also move fast and they hit on 3+. When they're reducing ranks, they roll more dice. So, it's a 6 for their first rank and second rank for the 8 dice. So, obviously, Catelyn comes to mind. When they're attacking units with fewer ranks, they get vicious as well as a panic. When attacking units that have more ranks than them, they get vicious and a panic token thrown on that unit, and they come also with Sundering. So that's honestly quite a nice package. Kai, what do you think about them?
Well, I really like them. I think 7 points makes them easy to fit anywhere. They hit hard. They're not the tankiest, especially compared to other Umber units that tends to be pretty tanky, but they have good morales. And they're fast because they're speed 6. So they're fast, they hit hard, they play like Dothrakis, and the Dothrakis are that's
Dothraki is your other army.
that's why I like them, right? I love hard hitting lightly armored cavalry. That's my jam. So
Well, we're gonna start assembling them together. So let's start by looking at the commanders that we have chosen. Alright. So for this week, 3 commanders have been chosen. Why? In theory, there should be 4, but there is another overlap, and the overlap is, well, Mage Mormon, but we'll get to it first. So let's start by discussing my first choice. So my first choice is Great John, because it's an Umber unit, and Great John has access to a lot of great cards like Berserker Tactics, which works well with them. Lash Out doesn't work as well, but Last Stand, Berserker Tactics are both great cards to use with the Umber Ravager.
yeah, I think any hard-hitting unit would really benefit from Great John, especially Berserker Tactics. It pushes them into one-shot territory, which is 12 damage, because the number of attack plus the damage from the Berserker Tactic and the Panic Test, you can exceed 12 without too much issue if you line everything up correctly.
Yeah, you have to line everything up correctly because you probably need to find something that gives highest attack die value.
Lots of ways to do that.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to do it, but you still need to do it. The next commander that both me and Kai chose, which is not a surprise, is Mage Mormon. Kai,
Right.
why don't you run through us why you chose Mage Mormon?
Okay, so the Berserker, the Ravagers, they come with a few a few weaknesses, right? One of them being they're kind of squishy, so mage actually keep them alive barely, right? She can use her card to bring them back to life, or she can use supply not supply aid support of Bear Island, right?
Yeah,
To manipulate their health, and if you can keep them alive at one rank, that's when they're the most dangerous. And mage can do this pretty well, so that's really
yeah,
why I picked mage.
yeah. That's fair because Mage has the card. Here we stand.
Here we
Yes,
stand, yeah.
that's the one card you want to make them survive on one wound.
Hmm.
And it's not a bad choice. Yeah, that's why I also chose Mage Moment.
Right.
Because Here We Stand is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Support Baron, it's not bad. It's not bad.
It,
Yeah,
it makes sense. It makes sense. She's one of the rare Stark commander that can do this. That can keep units alive. Normally, everyone else is about charging and punching, right? But
right.
so
Mage is
mage,
more about attrition and surviving with one wound.
right? Also,
Yeah.
she's a really good commander attachment to begin with. Like she has
Uh,
battle scars,
Battle
right?
Scar is good. Yeah,
Amazing, especially on those berserkers, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
All right. So the final commander that you can see in the screen today is a weird choice, but I'll let Kai explain. It
Wait,
is Horsefish slash Breton Tully on horse.
why is this a weird choice? It makes perfect sense to me that you
Explain.
well, first of all, he's the cavalry commander, right? Okay, no, that's actually not entirely right. I would say Rob Commander is the best cavalry commander because of his cards. But if you want to do an all cavalry Stark, this is the only guy you can use. This is the only horse commander in Stark. So obviously, I'm leaning towards that being the Targaryen slash Dothraki players. Um, he's here because his cards technically is okay. Some of his cards do work with cavalry better, like ride them down. So that somewhat synergizes with them. But mostly, this is just so that your entire unit, the entire army, can shift around the battlefield, can relocate when you want. So yeah, and because you have Sentinel on the commander, suddenly hitting the squishy Umber Ravagers can be a scary predicament for your opponent. So you always have forced them into making hard decisions.
I see. Well, I'm curious where you're putting Horsefish on. For lack
Mm,
of better term, if you're not familiar, we call Breton Tully on Horsefish.
yeah.
Something of a community joke. So
Mm.
yeah, get used to it as we call it Horsefish. It makes our life easier.
Uh,
But yeah, I'm curious where you put the commander in. But what do you think about his tactics cards in general, aside from write them down?
okay. Let's see. He has. Let me just read. Let me read it off just so I don't make a mistake. Here it is. So, ride by attack. One of my favorite cards. Not the easiest card to use, but if you have speed 6 cavalry, especially if you also have movement tricks, which you do get in this list from the Outrider, setting up ride by attack is pretty easy. And if you can get ride by attack, you can encircle the enemy. You can get behind them. That's not something that anyone wants to see. Like you have a Ravager, or even worse, you have a Tully Cav behind the enemy. So again, ride by attack. This is only good if you have a lot of cavalry. Otherwise, it's a dead card. Ride them
Yeah.
down is more of a surprise card because it charges your opponents. It doesn't give you a free attack, really. It gives you auto hits, but it can lock down movement of an opponent. It can counter an enemy's charge because when the enemy cavalry moves closer to charge your unit, you can charge them first, then you deny them their charge. And finally, Marshall. This one's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky, but sometimes when you need it, it gives you some heal cards and removing condition tokens, and that's pretty vital for Lance cavalries. So I think he doesn't exactly have the best cards in the game, but they can catch the opponent off guard.
Sure. Well, we'll see how you put them in the list later on. So let's move on to the next section where we'll talk about NCUs. Alright, so the 3 NCU you see today is Roderick, Catelyn, and for some reason, Robb Stark.
Why is this so weird? Okay.
Well, we'll
get there. We'll get there.
We'll get to it later. But the common one that we both chose is Catelyn Stark for today.
He makes sense to me.
Why would you pick Catelyn? Catelyn is so good.
Yeah, Catelyn. Well, especially for Umber units where their highest attack dice is actually not on their full rank. This is a combo that is as old as Sif itself. From the very first edition of Sif, you put Catelyn on Berserkers. This has always been the way it is, right?
So, fun tip. Catelyn might be the one NCU in the game / one component in the game since the 1.0, the very first version of the game, that has never seen a change. She's probably the oldest model / tool that has not seen a change. Everything else in the Stark versus Lannister box has seen a change.
Actually, that's true. She did remove remove token as well from the start. Yeah. She'd never changed.
Pretty sure she did.
Yeah. So she's a great design, I guess.
Yeah.
Never needed.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm with you on the same page. Catelyn, I value Catelyn more for not the highest attack dice, because quite often you have a lot of other ways to get highest attack dice. Like I believe Winter Smite does it as well.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's the removal of tokens which is crucial, because in this game, like with the current meta, the current way the game is set up, it is a lot easier to throw tokens onto enemy units than to remove tokens from your own units. If you understand what I mean. We are throwing out more units than removing at this current juncture. Yeah. So Catelyn is one of those premium tools, in my opinion. Like it's 4 points. When I say premium, I mean valuable in that sense. And she's good to have around.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have cavalries with really high dice numbers, because a weaken token will just screw up your map. But if you can just use Catelyn, remove it, that really saves you. And the sequencing of Catelyn is also very easy to use, especially when you want to use, say, assault order. You can put Catelyn on first and then trigger the assault order. This way, you ensure that you get maximum dice and that you get rid of that weaken token. Amazing NCU.
Right.
I bring her most of the time.
I'm pretty sure I bring her all the time. When I play Starks.
Yeah, well, yes, okay. I bring Sansa more often, but that's because I really like Assault Order.
Sure. Okay, so the next NCU on the list is Roderick, and I think it's rather obvious. I chose Roderick for very obvious reasons. Because, he gives rerolls, was it?
He gives rerolls and vulnerable tokens, which is the one token that the Ravagers don't give.
They give weaken?
I mean, sorry, the one offensive token. They give panic. They give panic.
Yeah, they give panic, right. Yeah. So let me double check, because my memory is a bit old, and Roderick is the one NCU that has changed many times. Yeah.
I don't even remember what he did in the first one. I think it might just be something
he
about
gave the
vulnerable
token for sure.
Yeah. The vulnerable token's always been there, but I forgot what else he did.
I can't remember what he gave, but I remember one edition ago. Sorry, was it early 2021 or like in between 2021 to where we are right now? He resets orders.
Resets order tokens, which I kind of love, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a good mechanic.
But reroll is a bit more flexible, I think.
Yeah, so rerolls is great because you want to nail those hits.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought Roderick. Vulnerable token is great as well because you go on swords, you can throw a vulnerable. It's honestly he's like a value commander. He generates value for you.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why I chose Roderick. So let's move on to the last one, which is Robb. Why? Tell me why, sir.
Okay, so to be very clear, I only bring Rob in the all cavalry list, right? Uh, but I do think that Night Watch has shown that having a hard hitting cavalry coming in from outflank is very dangerous. So this is something that you can certainly leverage against less mobile enemy, and especially nowadays there's so many game modes where outflank can really mess up your opponents, especially the ones with mission cards, right? Uh, Things like that, or banners in butchery. Having a cavalry pop up in the back is always a good thing. Plus, it also gives a, a damage buff if you can charge people from the flank. Uh,
Right.
yeah, of course, there's a bit of an overlap because they already generate panic token. But you can also use. You don't have to decide to send the Ravagers uh, all the time. You can also send in your Tully Cav if you want. So I
Right.
just think it's great on cavalries. So
Yeah, I mean, but I think the reason why I'm questioning this choice is not because of the value it potentially generates, but more of you're basically saying in round one you're okay to be at 3 combat unit, 3 NCUs, which
okay,
is the iffy thing for me.
so everyone that uses outflank does this, right? But you have to remember that unlike outflank is triggered on your off turn, right? Or on
Yeah,
the
correct.
opponent's initiative. But the Rob card is anytime once per game when you claim horse, right? So you
Yep.
can also do this round one if you want to, and then you take a flank where the opponent is exposed. So it doesn't have to be round two. It's slightly less practical than outflank because you do have to sacrifice an NCU, but the timing is a bit more open to you because you can use it on your initiative turn. So
Right.
yeah, but again, round one having one activation disadvantage if you're all horses, it's not that big a deal. I don't think so.
Right. But I also think it's situational or like game mode dependent, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, of course. As
Yeah.
with any outflank technology.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so with the 3 NCUs we have discussed covered, we will now move on to showing you what list we have built. So let's move on to the next segment where we will look at the 4 lists that we have built. 2 from me, 2 from Kai, and 2 of them are Mage Moment.
She's a good commander. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, so in the first list that I have built, it is the Great John Umber list. So, for some strange reason, I decided to put Great John in Great Access. Don't ask me why. I have no idea myself.
And you questioned me for bringing Rob, but if you do Jank, it's
Hey!
perfectly fine.
Oh, okay. I think the reason I brought Great John Umber in Great Access is because of the reckless heroism that gave them auto charge 6. That was probably why I bought Great John Umber in Great Access. And Great Access are honestly an interesting tech tool to explore more and more. Because in the current meta, when you have things on 2+ save, 3+ save, the ability to slap them and make them roll hits on saves that only works on 6s is pretty good to consider, especially if you see a champion of stack coming your way.
That is the dream, right? That is every Stark player's dream, is to bring House Umber Great Axis, and then you see either Iron Makers or Champions of the Stack right across the field. That's the dream.
Yeah. So that's definitely a dream. I also brought Ravagers and Fortune Seeker because I love to get the free attack to get value out of the Ravagers. So I brought a Fortune Sealer. Having Dauntless is nice as well, so they can get some healing. Like, it's not a lot, but it's a nice small little touch. I brought a Bog Devil, and you must be wondering, why so random a Bog Devil? Well, because Ravagers roll 8 dice if you have highest attack dice, and with Bog Devil they get reroll in precision. That is why.
Yep.
So I decided to bring a Bog Devil just to have some synergy for the Ravagers. And I decided to bring a Stormcrow Mercenary with Sandor. Yeah. because Sandor is just good to get weakened up because Great Axes and Ravagers and even the Bog Devils, their saves are not good.
No. Yeah. It's a good 5-point package, really. Sandor in Mercenaries. I really like them too.
Yeah, and my NCU choices are Catelyn, like we discussed, Roderick, like we discussed, and Eddard Stark. Why did I bring 5-point Eddard? I think it's something that we didn't consider and talk more about because he's just such a general use NCUs that don't complement units specifically, but more complement your strategies in the game. So I brought 5-point Eddard. Is because when you use a Salt Order or Swords on him and you influence the unit you are attacking, the opponent cannot heal because you can deny them from taking the backs to heal. This is a trick I learned from Van from last week, and I decided to, with Men's Raiders, the Bard version, I decided to use the same concept for Eddard. And then the idea is you slap them very hard with Ravager, and then you make sure you influence the one that they can heal, and then you make sure they cannot heal.
I really love Eddard 5 points for that. There's also him sacrificing himself when needed, and that can be very useful, especially because if you put him on sword later on, you can sacrifice him and then you can use sword again. So just a very, very good NCU.
Right.
Factions with assault orders hates him because he blocks their assault order.
Right. He blocks us all there as well.
Yeah.
Good to have him around.
Well, I love him. Both Eddard NCUs are really good.
Yeah, but I think after playing for a while, I think I'm more comfortable investing 5 points in an NCU than 6 points.
Okay, that's fair.
Expensive.
That is fair.
Yeah.
6 points is a lot.
Yeah. All right, with that done, let's move on to our next list, which is the first Mage Mormon list by me. All right, so let's take a look at the Mage Mormon list. All right, what did I put with the Mage Mormon list? Mage Mormon's in Umber Berserker for obvious reasons.
Right.
Battle Scar.
A very obvious choice.
Yeah, Battle Scar works very well with them, and because you can combine Battle Scar with Winter's Might or Northern Ferocity, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you declare for Battle Scar.
Right.
But normally, if you have full ranks, please declare highest attack die value.
Yeah. 8
Assuming
dice.
you don't have Catelyn. Yeah.
8 dice is amazing.
Yeah. Then I have Umber Ravagers with Fortune Seeker again. And I have another interesting choice. I brought House Starly Cavalier, of course. But I brought Karstark Spearman with Sandor. What do you think about this one?
Well, I always really like Karstark Spearmen. I think they're one of my favorites. 5-point tank in the game. And you put Sandor there so that you can weaken people so that when they charge you, not only do they not get the rerolls, you can weaken them, right? So that's
Right.
the idea. And I don't think this is a weird choice at all. I think they're amazing for their points, and
I think it's just a newer option, and that's why we don't see enough of this combo.
that is true.
Hero Box 3 for neutrals only got released recently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that recent, but at the same time, compared to when Karstark Spearman first came out, it's been quite some time. Yeah.
And especially if you don't hurt the Karstark Spearman because of the weaken, then the line that they have doubly will be a lot more painful because it relies on the number of their rank, right? So it's a good combo.
Yeah. So then my 3 NCUs, Catelyn, Roderick Cassell, and Sansa. Sansa's in there for obvious reason because it's more of a meme idea where I want to get to reuse Here We Stand. When Here We Stand is expanded, I'll get Sansa to take back Here We Stand, and hopefully they don't die so they can play Here We Stand again on their same unit 2 turns later.
The sequencing is a bit tricky, but when it happens, your opponent just stop talking to you for a while.
Yeah, because it's so obnoxious.
It is.
And the perfect unit for Here We Stand is Umber Berserker.
Yes.
So yeah, that's why I brought Sansa along. Catelyn is very obvious. Roderick. Yeah, I mean I already explained this earlier, so I'm not going to explain again. This whole package combined will give you quite a hard hitting list with a decent objective sitter with the Karstark Spearman.
Yeah. Solid list. I like it.
So yeah, now we'll start by moving on. We'll look at your list. So reminder, Kai's Mage Moment list is up next, and we'll take a look at what he got.
Right. So it starts the exact same way that your list starts because uh, because Mage and Umber Berserker is just such an obvious choice. So that's how it starts. You put Mage and then Umber Berserker, and then you have a lot of fun with them. Uh, I put in another Mormont Bruiser in there because I want another Mormont unit, and because I Disrupt is a very fun mechanic for me. It's really nice when you see your opponent having to roll 4 or 5s to hit you. And then because I bring Rickon Stark and Osha on my Horse Mormont Bruisers, they have Counter Strike, which again can hurt them back. So while being pretty tanky, and they can you can heal them with your cards. You can heal them. You can get them back alive with your cards. With Here We Stand. So this is another very obnoxious unit for 7 points. I like to add some range components to control the field a little bit, and that's why I brought the Stark Bowman with a Cranoxman Warden. Give them Overwatch, which will help you chip at your opponent and control their movement a little bit. And then finally, we bring the Umber Ravager there as the mobile component in your list, because I do feel any list that isn't Baratheon, that isn't as tanky as Baratheon or Greyjoy, you really have to have at the very least one mobile component in your list. Otherwise, people can just outmaneuver you. And for the NCU, I brought Catelyn Stark. Obvious reason. I brought Arya here instead of Sansa for a little bit of variety, and 2, just so that I get that mobility to move my Berserkers and my Bruisers. And of course, the Bowman as well. If you can move the Bowman into position for round opening with a sword, that's always good. Finally, Eddard Stark. Again, same reason as you. When you use a sword with Eddard Stark, the opponent cannot then take back, which is the most common and the most fundamental sequence normally. Is somebody starts the round with a sword, and then the opponent takes the bag. This is round 2 and up, of course, but they can't do that. They have to change their plan, and it really ruins the rhythm. So yeah, that's the list. It's a bit less straightforward than yours. Requires some trickery, some shenanigans, but like I said, there's a lot of ways you can play Starks.
I mean, to be fair, I'm normally the guy that enjoys playing all the meme builds. The builds list. So yes, the sensible choice is to change Sansa to Arya.
It is.
That is always the sensible choice.
It is always a sensible choice. Yeah.
I guess I have one question for you, which is, would you choose Stark Bowman or would you choose Stormcrow Archers? Because I believe you have space for neutral points.
Yes, but the difference is that when you bring the Stark, the Bowman, they can weaken your opponent, right? If the opponent rolled a 1, and that is to me a pretty big deal, because when you weaken your opponent and then they have to deal with things like the bruisers, that weakened tokens really gonna hurt them, and also being able to ignore line of sight and things like that. And being 3+ as opposed to 4+, right? Because the archers, the Stormcrow archers, sure, when you control the sword, they get reroll, which makes them probably better than the Bowman in hitting. But on those off turns when you don't have it, I think the 3+ is a big difference.
Sure, 3+, sure. That makes sense. Okay, I think we covered enough of the Mage Moment. She's probably one of the go-to commanders to work with Umber. Alright, so now let's look at the final list of today. It's the Horsefish list.
Yeah.
So let's go and take a look at Horsefish.
These are the Dothrakis of Westeros.
Explain to us.
Well, you start this list with a House Tully Cavalier, points because it's a House Tully Cavalier. They're probably the best cavalry unit in the game right now, if not tied for the best cavalry unit in the game right now. You put Brynden Tully, Outrider Commander, on them, giving them Sentinel and Elusive Escape, which doesn't come into play as easily because you don't have any cards that gives you retreat. But sometimes when you use it right, you can then counterattack on the opponent's flank instead of their front. This could be a big deal. And then the second one is you bring a Stark Outrider. The Stark Outrider is a utility piece more than it is a combat piece. It's fast. It can give you tactical reposition, which helps your already fast list quite a bit. Can get you out of charge range if you need it. It can get you into charge range if you need it. So this is mostly to support the other 3 hard-hitting cavalry. Then you bring 2 Umber Ravagers simply because why not? We're trying to showcase the Umber Ravagers here. Why not bring 2? They hit hard enough. If you play them right, they're kind of like my beloved Screamer. You have to get them at the right time. You have to cripple the enemy, otherwise they die because they're not very tanky. And then for the NCUs, we brought Sansa Stark to recycle a lot of the cards like Assault Orders or Ride by Attack or whatever you need. And then you have Roderick Cassell because you want to get, if the opponent a common counter to Lance Cavalry or to any hard-hitting cavalry is to put down swamps, but Roderick helps you to make sure that you get the reroll and that your Alpha Strike actually cripples the enemy because you don't want your unit to be stuck from a bad Alpha Strike. And finally, Robb Stark. Robb is here for that fun outflank that really messes with the way your opponent has to deploy. Because honestly, outflank is one of those technology that if your opponent does not deploy specifically to counteract it, they can get steamrolled really bad unless they also have multiple good cavalries or things with free maneuvers. So that's the list. That's my all-horse Stark list.
I don't have any criticism or advice regarding the combat unit.
Okay.
Yeah, but your NCU choice,
what would you change? What would you change?
I would take out Rob from Catelyn. Catelyn is missing.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
But that's it. Like Roderick, I'll keep Roderick. I'll keep Rob. I'll keep Catelyn. Yeah. And I guess you want Sansa for Assault Orders because I cannot see you taking back the Commander cards.
Hey, Ride by Attack can be very useful because your opponent cannot pivot if you use that, So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the sensible choice is to use Catelyn instead of Rob. If you're going for a fun play, just like I went for the fun play with Sansa in Mage Moment list, you can choose Rob. Yeah.
Well, again, normally in Civ, especially in competitive format, you get to see what the objectives are before you submit your list. So for things like Winds of Winter or anything that involves the secret objective cards, having an outflanker can really make you get you some easy scoring with the card that says you need to have a unit in the opponent's deployment zone.
Right. So Winds of Winter. Yeah.
So things like these, because we did make these lists in a vacuum, but that's one of my thinking. That's why I wanted to make the list like this. Sure.
I mean, it's like a example that can be tweaked based on the meta, based on game mode. So yeah, it's just like a basic list for us to work with. No issue. Anyway, well, we just covered the 4 lists for today, so we're going to our closing segment as usual. So let's head to our closing segment. All right, Kai. With all that said and done, where do you think the Umber Ravager will place itself within the start power ranking / unit ranking list?
Well, it will not be a replacement for Tilly Cavalier, because I do think as a damager, Tilly Cavaliers can still out damage them, and it just has better stats. But it is cheaper by 1 point, and as you know, in this game, cheaper by 1 point can change your entire list. But it's also a very fun unit in that even if it gets stuck, even if you hit it until it's almost dead, it can hit you back really, really hard. And, that's always been kind of the Stark's motto, right? So I think this is a very, very Stark unit. And I think it will have a place in many lists.
Sure. Well, I kind of agree with you there. So let's just leave it at that. We'll see how players around the world will continue to use Umber Ravager, because, let's just say things are going to change in the not so far future with S05 arriving in maybe the next few months.
Ooh.
Well, I'll leave you with that tease.
What? You can't do that. Come on.
I can, and I just did. Just kidding. Well, let's close up. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you'd like to see more of such content that we produce every 2 weeks, let us know in the comment below. Any room for improvement, let us know, because we're always looking for a better format for you guys to view with. Also remember to like and subscribe to our channel, share with your friends if you can, because the more people that watch this video, the more it helps us grow, the more we are more motivated to do this. Just kidding, I'm motivated enough. Okay, so thanks everyone. We'll see you next time in You Know Nothing.